I was so anxious. I was so nervous. Lots of Black women, lots of my friends are still suffering.
Rapper Eve has come forward with new revelations about her early years in the music industry. In particular, she shared her struggles and her complicated relationship with disgraced music mogul Diddy. In her new memoir, Who's That Girl?, Eve opens up about her time as a teenage dancer. Through a chance meeting with Maze, who was signed to Diddy's label, she changed her life. But while her career took off, Eve has now reflected on the darker side of her time with Diddy's team and how those years left her feeling broken. Before she became a household name with hits like Let Me Blow Your Mind and Gangsta 11, Eve, born Eve Jahan Jeffers, was struggling to make ends meet. She left her home in Philadelphia and moved to New York as a teenager. It wasn't long before she found herself working at a strip club in the Bronx, trying to make quick money to fund her dream of becoming a rapper. In her memoir, Eve admitted she didn't enjoy dancing. She wrote that she was the laziest dancer in New York, describing how she would often try to avoid her turn on stage. Instead, she found creative ways to make money, even offering to rap for clients instead of dancing. One night when Maze visited the club, a fellow dancer pushed Eve to perform for him. But instead of dancing, Eve rapped, and Maze was so impressed that he invited her to his studio. That night marked the beginning of her music career. She recalled, "It was the most fun I'd had in New York since I started dancing." With her friends from the club by her side, Eve spent the night in Maze's car, rapping over beats and cruising through the city. It was a night she would never forget. As her career began to take off, Eve was introduced to Diddy. At the time, he was one of the biggest names in the music industry, and Eve sought his advice on how to make it as a rapper. But despite the business advice Diddy offered, Eve revealed that her time with his team ultimately left her feeling conflicted and guilty. In her memoir, she wrote about how everything she experienced during those years weighed heavily on her. She shared that everything she experienced made her feel guilty. She wrote, "I knew I didn't have to be there, but I stayed because I thought it was my only way out." She struggled with the choices she made to survive, knowing that many of the other dancers were there to support their families. Though she was grateful for the opportunities that came her way, Eve now looks back on that time with regret. She says that Diddy's influence on her life was far from positive. She confessed that at the time she thought he was helping her, but in reality, she was just another piece in his game. One of the biggest challenges Eve faced was keeping her past as a dancer hidden from her family. For years, she kept her double life a secret, even as her music career flourished. She would travel back and forth between Philadelphia and New York, pretending that everything was normal. But deep down, she was struggling. Eventually, Eve decided she couldn't keep her secret any longer. She finally opened up about her past in an old interview, knowing that it could damage her reputation. But she felt it was important to be honest, especially with her mother. After the article was published, Eve called her mom and asked her to read it. She was shocked by her mother's reaction. Eve recalled, "She wasn't mad. She understood why I did what I did. She knew I was trying to make money and that I had my reasons for keeping it a secret." Despite the challenges she faced early on, Eve went on to become one of the most successful female rappers of her time. Her debut album, Let There Be Eve, went double platinum, and she became the third female rapper to hit #1 on the Billboard 200. She later expanded her career into acting, appearing in shows like Jane the Virgin and Empire, and even launched her own clothing line, Fetish. But even with her success, Eve admitted the guilt from her early years never fully went away. She also reflected on how Diddy's influence shaped her career, but also how it contributed to her feeling lost and unsure of herself. In her memoir, Eve admits that she turned to Diddy for advice when she launched her clothing line. She took him out to lunch, notebook in hand, ready to ask him about experiences with his own brand, Sean John. To her surprise, Diddy was shocked that she wanted to talk business. She wrote, "No one ever pulled up on Puff to feed him and ask business questions." Despite their history, Eve appreciated Diddy's advice. But more recently, she started to feel that her relationship with him was built on shaky ground. She said, "He gave me business tips, but he also took a lot from me." However, she hasn't shared much more detail about what she meant. Eve has come a long way since her early days as a teenage dancer trying to make it in the music industry. Now at 45, she's using her platform to share her story, hoping to inspire others who may be struggling to find their way. Although she faced plenty of struggle, she had to face the risk of encountering Diddy at a young age. Eve is now flourishing. She is married and is a loving mother to her son, Wild Wolf, who she shares with her husband, Maximilian Cooper. Despite being married to a successful rapper, Maximilian has an interesting career in his own right. Online outlets such as Legit have reported him to have a net worth of around $60 million. According to People magazine, he's an entrepreneur and a fashion designer from the UK. Last year, she talked to NME ahead of the MOBO Awards to discuss her career. And she opened up about how she has been balancing the responsibilities of motherhood alongside being a musician. She told the interviewer that she was still figuring it out. She went on to say that she was finding it very interesting. And although she admitted that her energy levels weren't the same as they used to be, she was able to be positive about it. She said that it was nice to be in a position where she could be discerning about what work she chooses to do. She also said that any of the things she did now were for herself, but also for the future of her son. She stated that her son was going to see all the work she did from his birth onward. This just shows how far Eve has come in terms of sharing her truth with her loved ones. While her early struggles at one point made her fear what they'd think of her, her new memoir shows that Eve is now proud of her journey to stardom.